If you're listening to this when the podcast drops, happy Valentine's Day week. And boy, can that mean a lot, depending on what age group that you're working with. Emotions can start to run high, kids can start to act a little silly, and certainly there is some excitement in the air. So this is a great excuse for us to talk about something that is so important in our classrooms and can be often overlooked, and that is peer-to-peer relationships. They matter so much, especially when it comes to behavior and classroom calm. So let's not waste another moment. Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, the podcast for teachers who love the work but need a little spark to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and passionate educator of over 25 years. If you're overwhelmed by behaviors, disengaged students, and long, exhausting days, you are not alone. But together, we can turn things around and you can teach with confidence and purpose again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, find your favorite pen, I know you have one, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired and enjoy teaching again. Have you ever walked into your classroom in the morning and just felt, dread? Like you're already exhausted before the day even starts? I've worked with so many teachers who feel like the behavior issues are endless. Outbursts, shutdowns, the constant buzz of chaos that makes you question why you even got into teaching in the first place. Well, let me tell you, something needs to change. And what I've done is I've put together the best of what I've been sharing with other teachers over the last 19 years of hosting workshops and courses and retreats, and discovered the framework to help you reset your classroom, to bring back the creativity, the connection, and the calm that you're craving. Teaching can feel joyful again. I want you to know that you don't have to keep fighting the same battles day after day. You can take the reins and make change for yourself. That's exactly why I created the Classroom Reset. It's a teacher-centered group coaching program to share the very steps that have transformed my teaching and my students' learning, along with hundreds of other teachers who are looking for ways to calm classroom chaos, bring creativity back into their lessons, and finally enjoy teaching again without adding more to your plates. We'll look at engagement strategies, creative classroom management strategies, and some arts integrated tactics that help with your students' social emotional growth and engagement. And we'll do it in a way that it just becomes part of what you do in your classroom. I know you want to hit that reset button. So go to theinspiredclassroom.com/reset. That's theinspiredclassroom.com/RESET. Or check out the show notes for the link. Let's do this together. As teachers, we talk a lot about relationships, and rightly so. We work hard to build strong relationships with our students. We check in, we connect, we figure ways to relate to our kids so that we can teach them and they'll learn. But here's what we don't always talk about enough. Student-to-student relationships, they matter just as much, if not more, when it comes to how smoothly your classroom runs. And if you haven't been able to put a big emphasis on this inside your classroom, that's completely understandable. Most of us were not trained on how to cultivate that type of thing inside of our classroom. Most of us were trained to believe that we are the relationship builders. That if something feels off, it's our job to step in, to fix it, to smooth it over, to manage it. But that shouldn't always be the case. So let's talk about what peer-to-peer or student-to-student relationships actually do in a classroom. And to be really clear, this is not about forced friendship. I mean, how many times have you had to say to a student who's working together with another student, it doesn't mean you have to be best friends. All you have to do is work together, right? But the fact is that students need to learn how to work with classmates, even when they're not close. That is a life skill. In fact, just today, I switched all of my students' seats and I had to have a little bit of a chat about how sitting next to a different person is a totally natural thing, and you should be able to see this as an opportunity to maybe get to know one of your classmates a little bit better. Building up these peer-to-peer relationships gives students that basic sense of belonging with each other, and that can lead to less bickering, less social friction, less emotional tension, and let's hope less drama. Wouldn't it just be amazing for your students to just see their peers as equals? Like they are all in this together. Like they know each person has their own unique qualities. When your students start to see each other as classmates, it can remove those awkward, uncomfortable moments that can drain your energy when you see it and witness it and have to deal with it constantly. You know the ones, right? When it's time to pick partners, or like I had to do this morning, change seats, or to work in a group. And suddenly the room can feel tense and awkward, and kids start to freeze and their eyes start darting around, and undoubtedly somebody is left out. When peer relationships are fragile, every transition can become emotionally loaded. But when students feel safe with each other, those moments, they just kind of pass. And that is such a relief. And what's even more, peer-to-peer relationships, they also take the pressure off of you. You're no longer the only source of connection in your classroom. You're no longer the sole emotional regulator in the room. Students will begin to support each other. They can offer to help a struggling classmate with a math problem, or offer to help them log in when their Chromebook is acting funky. And what a moment that can be when two classmates who would never hang out outside of school are working together voluntarily inside of your classroom. And finally, and this was a big one, when students feel like they belong, not just to you, but to the whole group, they are more willing to take academic risks. They participate more. They're not afraid of making mistakes. They don't shut down as much because they understand not only will you support them, but their classmates will too. Belonging leads to learning. I've seen this play out in so many classrooms. I've worked with classes where the academic instruction was solid, the teacher obviously cared deeply, but the social dynamics were just constantly causing disruptions. Partner work was just awkward. Group projects were turning into like conflicts. Small comments that students would make, sometimes without thinking, would lead to really big reactions. And what stands out to me is this. The behavior issues weren't just coming from quote unquote bad kids. They were coming from kids who just didn't feel socially safe with each other. On the flip side, I've seen classrooms where students, they weren't best friends, but they understood how to work together. And when you can have a classroom where most of your students are like that, that classroom can run calmly, they can run smoothly, they require fewer behavior interventions. And let's face it, it's good for the teacher too. You're not constantly putting out fires. Now, I want to share a couple of simple ways that teachers can support peer relationships. Not activities, just cues and choices that quietly shape your culture in your classroom. One of the most powerful things you can do is prep your students ahead of time. Here's what I mean. Before you do partner work, instead of just saying find a partner, have a light discussion with your students. Level with them. Talk about how this can actually be a stressful time for all of them as they try and scramble to find a partner. Mention that you have had those feelings too in the past, trying to find someone that you like enough that you can work with, maybe having to make choices about working with one friend over another. But also mention how every single person in the classroom deserves to have someone to work with, and let them know that you're going to be observing who are the kind students in the classroom who are going to really put in an effort to make sure that everybody in the classroom has someone to work with. You might even say something like, I'll be watching you. I'm going to watch to make sure everyone is being polite and kind as they pick classmates to work with. That one sentence, that's going to matter. And sometimes I'll even say, that if there's anyone who doesn't want to pick partners, they can come to me and I will actually help them. In my classroom, we also have a very important shared expectation. If a student notices someone without a partner, they can just go walk over to them and say, hey, come join us. And we actually practice saying that. And I kind of have my arm out and I kind of scoop it around like I'm inviting someone to come join. And we'll all say in a sing-songy way, hey, come join us. And then what happens? I see some students actually trying that out. And it's really, really great. And then if I notice it, I make eye contact with them. I give them a pat on the back, a quick word of praise, because that is really an important thing and an important skill for our students to be able to understand how to do. Another small thing to consider is being flexible with the numbers that you need to have in each group. If the exact number of a group doesn't truly matter, consider it loosening that expectation so that other kids can easily be included. When we're a little bit more lenient, we remove some of that pressure. And I speak from experience because I used to be like, nope, figure it out. I said 3 people to a group. If it's not working, find another way to make it work. And someone in the group needs to move, and then I'd just walk away. But I've learned that in some situations, I need to really guide my students a little bit more in how to be caring and compassionate to their classmates. So maybe you find that same thing in your room. Let's face it, there are always going to be those kids who are just on the edges, socially, emotionally. Maybe they're shy or awkward or not as advanced as other kids. Maybe they get in trouble or they're just a little different, right? But when we model how to be kind and inviting to others in the classroom, we can set such a good example for our kids. And this is the perfect opportunity to wrangle in a couple of those students who have their heart in the right place. And you can talk to them ahead of time and kind of give them that nudge in the right direction to really be kind and inviting and say, hey, come join us to some of those other kids. Now, these aren't big, huge ideas, right? And these are things that I know you know, because they are so powerful in our classrooms. And sometimes it's these little things that can kind of be forgotten. I find myself reminding myself a lot in terms of, how important it is to kind of set the stage before I ask students to get into partners or to small groups. And when I do, the whole process of finding a partner, getting into groups is just a lot more calm. And let's face it, this type of work also sends a very powerful message to your students. And that is that in this classroom, belonging matters. This is why peer-to-peer relationships are such an important part of one of the most important steps in my RESET framework. It's one of the E's in RESET that stands for establishing a caring classroom culture. These things are not an extra. They are foundational to having a classroom of students who are ready to learn. When students feel connected to each other, behavior improves even before it becomes a problem. Not because the kids are perfect, but because the environment that we create for them supports them. Now, if you're listening and thinking, I like what you're saying, Elizabeth, this makes some sense to me, I want you to know this is exactly the kind of work that we focus on inside the Classroom Reset, which is my 6-month reset experience. We look at peer-to-peer relationships not as something to simply fix in the moment, but as something to build over time, and as a way to build a caring classroom culture that leads to better behavior overall. And that's just one part of the entire framework. We look at creative engagement strategies that bring your content to life, social emotional skills that help students to just be ready to learn, and ways for you to grow as the caring, creative professional that I know you are. You know what else I know? I know you don't need a new initiative. you need a reset. And you can learn more about the Classroom Reset by going to theinspiredclassroom.com/reset. It would be so great to have you join. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.